And welcome everybody to the Bob Screwed Up edition of Legal Tech Week. If you're here, you saw my email and you were able to re-register and get back in. And it looks like there's at least some people who've made it back in, so that's a good thing. We are now back to posting all of these episodes on YouTube. We were doing that for a while and then we stopped doing it for a while. So if you ever miss an episode, and want to catch up on the prior week's episode, you can do that in YouTube. And there, I'll drop the link in the panel in the chat for people for our YouTube channel there. And plus, we put it out as a podcast as well, so you can always listen to the audio. So that's the good news. So I'm Bob Ambrogi, and I am the host of this show. And we've got a small panel today, but lots of some interesting stuff to talk about. And we can maybe keep it a little short and let people get off on their long weekends to start their long weekends. But let's introduce ourselves. Jean, you want to kick us off?
Hi, I'm Jean O'Grady. I am the author and editor of Dewey Be Strategic, and I also write for Legal Tech Hub.
What's this Legal Tech Hub thing? I haven't heard.
I don't know, Bob. It's subversive.
It is. All right, and Joe.
Joe Patrice from Above the Law and Thinking Like a Lawyer podcast. I'm here. I'm actually on the West Coast, so I'm experiencing what Caroline always experiences, this show in a weird time zone. So I'm, like in the middle of the day. I don't know. Like this is new for me.
And Zach.
Hey everybody, I'm Zach Warren. I'm editor-in-chief of ALM's Legal Tech News. I'm located in Big Ten country, which these days could be anywhere from New Jersey to LA, including Joe on the West Coast. So yeah, I'm in Minneapolis, which I guess is kind of dead center of it.
Sounds good. And where on the West Coast are you, Joe? We need to know.
I'm in Portland. I'm originally from Portland, so
I'm
at home.
I did not.
Yeah.
Know that.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, well, this was a really interesting week, and we've talked a lot about litigation analytics and judge analytics and legal analytics on this show, and in some weird sort of karmic convergence, this was a week in which we lost a legal analytics company and gained a legal analytics company, I guess. But I don't know. I think probably all of us, it's in some way or another, wrote this week about the really kind of sad news, I think, about Gavelytics shutting down. I think all of you on this panel are probably like me in that we've all gotten to know some of the people, including Rick Merrill, the CEO and founder there, over the years. And I actually went out to their headquarters once when I was out in LA and sat and recorded a podcast with them out there. Actually fairly early on, not long after they'd gotten going, and followed them closely ever since. It's an area of legal tech that I am very enthusiastic about and that I find really interesting, the whole idea of litigation analytics. And they seem to have some traction and be one of the primary players in this difficult field, but it didn't happen for them. So I don't know. What do y'all think?
Well, I mean, their letter to their customers said it was a financing issue, and a couple of weeks ago I reported on, I think it was from Artificial Lawyers, saying that legal tech financing VC money was contracting, and I saw a second story saying the first half of this year there was a contraction. So I think it was definitely more financing, getting more runway than the quality of the product, because it was a very sophisticated product. I mean, and I think part of it, maybe the collapse was also due to a lack of sophistication among consumers, because it actually had some very unique content. And now there is a lot of generic analytics out there, in terms of, lots of the big platforms, Lexis and Westlaw, have some kind of state analytics in them, but none of them did what Gavelytics did. And so I think it is partially no, understanding the state analytics market takes a lot of energy. And I think that maybe it was hard for them to message how they had an advantage. And, I actually had an experience a couple of years ago where a very sophisticated partner who was like a data scientist actually thought that they had and he was talking about New York, not California. He thought that they actually had a superior analytics product for New York. But when you look at the competition, and I think also the growth of APIs, I think, I was thinking originally, maybe it was Lex Machina, but I think more likely it was something like Docket Alarm that could deliver data directly into APIs. So I'd be curious to hear what you all think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it speaks partially too about just how tough state court data in particular is. Like, I know Gavelytics, and you just mentioned it, Gene, they were very California centric when they rolled up, and they had, 13 or so state courts that they were really focused on in that state. And then their big expansion was to Florida and picking out individual states. But from the standpoint of VC, you're kind of limited in your overall capital and the overall market, I should say, that you can reach out to in that case, because, okay, you have this very specific subset of California lawyers who are in these very specific courts, and California or Florida, very specific courts, New York, very specific courts. They're very good at what they did. But if you're looking for that next level of financing, specifically Series B, C, which is where I think they were, a lot of the investors are going to say, well, you just don't have the amount of available market as some of these other platforms that maybe can go national, maybe are a little bit more surface level in what they do, but more people can use. So I kind of echoing Bob's point, it's tough to see them go. On a very personal level, I like Rick. I worked with him well, but yeah, it's just a tough one with that market out there right now.
Yeah, I think in a way, Zach, you maybe hit the nail on the head. I think you both hit it, this Gene and Zach, but that the state court analytics are kind of a whole other animal than just doing the PACER analytics. I mean, PACER is a challenge in and of itself, because there's all these problems with the nature of suit codes not necessarily reflecting what the case is about, or with dirty data in PACER where names are misspelled, or lawyers change firms, or the docket data doesn't really reflect who the lawyer is on a case, but doing, basically when you're trying to go do the state data, you're basically trying to do that at least 50 times over, and really more than that, because in some states it's the variances in the data are county to county or court to court. So it ends up being a huge expense. And I mean, that was, I think, part of the reason that, way back when Lex Machina was kind of happy to get acquired by LexisNexis, because LexisNexis had some of that stuff already, and just made it easier for them than having to go out and collect it all themselves. And there's still, despite advances in the technology and in AI, there's still a lot of human effort that goes into this cleaning and compiling this data. So that makes it very expensive. So I don't know. It's a challenge.
Bob,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you reminded me that the other company that was Ravel, and I thought Ravel was another terrific standalone analytics company that also just couldn't get financing, but they got bought. They got bought by Lexis, and they have now been rolled into, I think it's called I can't remember what it's even called, but they're rolled into Lexis, Lex Machina. Is it Context?
I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what's the other? I mean, what I'm trying to think. What Trellis is the other one that's doing the state court analytics, and they've been able to raise some money, and they seem again to be getting some traction going for what they're doing.
Yeah. I was wondering that, because I looked it up as I was writing the Gavelytics, and I think it was a 14 million raise that they had last year.
That's what I was just trying to find. Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of a different market.
Yeah.
Trellis has almost had more of a KM approach where they are putting the full text documents, and I think they have a second, they're not just selling analytics, they're selling access to work product. So I think that was another way in which they distinguished themselves in the market.
Yeah. Although Gavelytics was doing some of that. I mean, they had like briefs, they had a brief bank up
Yeah.
and stuff like that. You know, you hear so many things when there's news like this. I mean, it was also kind of, I guess there's no good way to announce that your company is closing down. I mean, you know, it was it's a sad thing for the founder, and you know, I think we probably all got more or less the same email, and pretty concise message, not saying a lot of details about it. You know, but you do start hearing lots of rumors, and one of the rumors I'd heard was that they had some opportunities, and this is purely rumor. I can't substantiate this, but that they had some opportunities to be acquired over the last year that they maybe had still been fielding or had maybe turned down. I don't know if any of that's true, but you would think that there's got to be something there that somebody would want to pick up, at least out of the ashes, if you will, of the company, because they must have developed some pretty good tech there, and there must be something they can do.
Yeah, and they had a patent. I wrote a post about how they had gotten a patent on their visualization tool, which I don't know of many other small companies that had that.
Yeah, I think there might be more to this story. You mentioned your story, Bob, and I heard the same thing off the record from Rick, that like just we'll talk late next week, essentially.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's a long story there. So we were kicking around, do we want to do a follow-up to this right away? But I think we're going to be waiting until after we talk to Rick and see what's up there.
Yeah, and I chalk part of that off just to the idea that he was just, you know, not wanting to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
Right, shell shocked.
Not a good week.
Yeah.
But anyway, but oddly enough, in the same week in which Gavelytics shuts down, we have another legal analytics company spring up. So Zach, you covered that.
We did, yeah. So the name of the company is Dicta. And essentially what they are, they're federal, not state, but they're looking to make specific predictions, particularly right now on whether a case will proceed or dismiss, but they also have predictions for summary judgment as well as other things in development. Essentially, I found it really interesting because, I mean, as we were just talking about, we've seen a lot of these tools that take past case law and kind of shuffle it up, slice and dice. And even if tools like Gavelytics or Trellis or Lex Machina don't make specific predictions, they give you a lot on past cases and kind of toe up to that line without giving a specific figure on it. Dicta not only gives you a specific figure on it and gives you a specific day count that they think estimate it will take, but they are taking in a lot of external demographic type information as well, like net worth of the judge is one thing, whether they were promoted by a Democratic or Republican president, their geographic location in the country, even gender. And their
political affiliation, where they went to law school.
So whether they went to law school is another one. So folding in a lot of different information there to try and give this prediction. And I talked with them, and yeah, it looked like a quick product. It's browser based. Basically, you just go in, plug in a case number, and it will spit out its prediction right away. But also just kind of all the data points that they're putting in behind the scenes, I found very interesting. So developed by a former litigator, Department of Defense, Sidley Austin, was GC of a data science company as well, which kind of gave them the idea. I will be very curious to see how they develop it from here.
So, so Zach, does it allow you to do like scenario planning? Like if you switch judges, you switch courts, you can sort of see how the prediction changes?
Yeah, they do. I got the impression it was a little bit rudimentary on that
Okay.
front, more so than like if all the variables are in there. But he
Mhm.
did give me the scenario of they're going to plaintiffs firms and saying, hey, if you're forum shopping or something like that, you can plug in the rest of these variables, and this is what your chances of dismissal might look like in X versus Y.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had a demo today. I hadn't had a chance to write it up yet, but I just finally saw it this morning, and I'd asked the same question too. And yeah, that's you can go in and you can plug in some sort of basic information about who the plaintiff is, who the defendant is, the nature of the case, so a few other variables, and then get predictions sort of across all federal courts, and then by specific federal courts, and then within specific federal courts by specific judges within those courts. So you can do that much. Um, but yeah, I thought it was a really, really cool product. Also, I mean, as you said, Zach, it's at this point it's only predicting the outcomes of motions to dismiss, and they do want to add other stuff. And speak of the devil, they want to go into state courts too. Is the other thing he said. They're working on California, New York, and Texas. I think he said already. Um, but this idea of bringing into the consideration all this other stuff about a judge that traditional litigation analytics doesn't account for. So if one of your lawyers went to the same law school as this judge, how does that affect your likelihood of succeeding or not on this motion to dismiss before this judge? And it's sort of like in a way it's a little, I don't know if it's a dirty little secret, and certainly the Supreme Court has proven this week that the judges are not don't have the kind of impartiality and objectivity we all like to think they have. But I think if you talk to a lot of judges, they'll always say, "Oh, it doesn't matter to me if the lawyer went to my law school, or if the lawyer worked at a firm I used to work at, or if they're Republican or not. I mean, those things just don't matter to me." But we all know that they do, and we all know that they play into it. And so here's a tool that's really pulling that all together in a way that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Just one other point just on that before. Well, go ahead and I'll make my other point.
Oh, I was just going to say to that point. I mean, I asked that question too. Like, are you expecting pushback from judges on this if they think that you're bringing in all this information and it's not just pure impartial? And he kind of tried to flip it and made the point that said no, because we're looking at them as human beings, and as human beings, there are so many variables that come into your decision making. So I'm not just looking at this like, oh, my IP case, I'm a defendant, let's go to Republican jurisdiction. There are more variables that are going to be into that. So even if that's one thing that's weighted, there is much more at play here.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is what happens with the brand new judge? A judge has just gone on the bench. Maybe they've decided one or two motions to dismiss, but you don't have 10 years of data or whatever on that judge. He said it barely affects the accuracy of their prediction, because he said what they're actually able to do is they've got so many different data points that they're analyzing that if they draw a full composite picture of this judge using all those different data points, it's still going to be, he said their standard accuracy is something like 87% correct in predicting, and it goes down to maybe three points from that if it's a brand new judge. So, I mean, who knows? We none of us have actually tried it, but it certainly looks impressive. And the other thing is they're kind of vague on is the pricing here. It's a monthly SaaS subscription. And I said, well, how much? Could a small firm afford this, or do you have to be Sidley, where this guy used to work, to afford it? And he said, well, if you think about the value, how much value there is, and knowing how $1 million case is going to turn out, then you can appreciate it's worth paying some money for these kind of analytics or something. So it sounds expensive.
But do they give you a refund if they're wrong?
There you go. That would be good. Yeah, and somebody in the chat asked, I wonder if it's more or less accurate for particular types of cases, and I don't know. He did say that they try and adjust they do try and clean up like the nature of suit issue we were talking about before for Pacer, that because nature of suit often doesn't really reflect what the case is actually about, that they are
Or there are
actually
multiple.
taking the or sometimes it might just say, I mean, sometimes you might get a case that says trademark where the real issue is a patent issue or something, or
Right.
something like that, you know.
Yeah. And
But
it's
he said
similar.
they're downloading the documents, the litigation documents as well, and trying to do text analysis to try and correct for that.
Yeah, and similarly, he told me that 87% is with all variables in there as well, but I don't know how that varies across different case types.
Yeah.
It would also be interesting to know how many of the judges they have 100% of the variables for, because that variable would affect the variables.
Right.
Fair.
Yeah. And I think I asked him that question. I'm not sure I got a clear answer, except again, his point, the answer was sort of similar to what he said about the new judges, which is that they have so many data points that if you're missing some of them for a particular judge, you're still going to get a pretty accurate. Although he also wouldn't, I don't know if he did this with you, Zach, but he said he wouldn't give me the full list of the data points that they're looking at, because that's proprietary to what they're doing. So,
Yeah, I didn't ask.
yeah. So, well, interesting. And that's something that takes, and he also says he's the only one that really does prediction. I mean, when you look at the other ones, they show you like historic, as you said earlier, Zach, they show you historical results. Like this judge, you know, rules against plaintiffs in 97% of motions to dismiss or something, but it doesn't say how the judge is going to rule in your specific case. And I was trying to remember, I thought there was somebody else out there that did some predictions. I couldn't think of who it was.
The only product I can think of is Blue Jay, but that's in the tax regulatory area. They do it based on scenarios and they'll predict outcomes, but I can't, I agree with you. I'm trying to rack my brain to see if there is somebody else who did judge predictions.
The name is escaping me. There is a startup out of, I think, Australia that did it in a very specific subset, and I want to say personal injury. But I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look that up. But on a large scale across all types of cases, I don't think I've seen any other.
Yeah. Good. I think it's Joe's turn to talk, because he hasn't. This is an unusually long length of silence for Joe, so I'm worried.
I
about
know. No, that's fair. I mean, I'm worried about me too. So yeah, no. So my thing this week, I love my reports and studies, and we got one out of Ironclad talking about using their wealth of contracts that they kind of have in the system. They were discussing some trends they saw, and there were a lot of trends in that they isolated, but the one that I found most interesting was the real dramatic increase in the turnaround time for contracts, at least within their system. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of self-selection there, to the extent that people using this product probably are more savvy legal departments than others, but it had gone over the course of the pandemic something like from 16 days at the average turnaround time to 6. That's pretty extreme over the course of a couple of years. They also were noting that a lot of this comes from new collaboration tools that people were using, both internally as opposed to, the classic way for transactional lawyers out there, the classic way of trying to keep straight 400 different emails with one nit on each different one and integrating them all into one document. Instead, having a tool that allows everyone to work at the same time in one place, but with protection so that you don't screw it up. And not just internally, they were also reporting that there were a lot of third-party involvement, or well, not third-party, second-party, at least third-party with it as between legal and enterprise, as in bringing in the counterparties on some of these to directly through this kind of protected system, start making their edits there so everyone is seeing it all in the same place, which would definitely speed up the process too. So I thought it was interesting, especially when we hear that we talked in the past, I talked about the Audit report, I think a while back, talking about how legal is getting bypassed by enterprise employees a lot who just don't want to have to deal with how slow and inefficient legal is. The fact that, there's reason to believe legal's actually getting super fast is valuable and suggests that things may be changing. That was all on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting one. And for me, it kind of just brings to mind a question, how much of this is technology and how much of this is just people understanding things and changing their workflows under the pandemic. I'm sure Ironclad would tell you that the technology is what actually facilitates all of that. You can't have anything without the technology. But I do think that there's an element of just people understanding a little bit more what they have and what they can use, and getting comfortable with, say, using collaboration tools and collaborating in a different way that maybe they weren't forced into before the pandemic. So it definitely, I think you said 16 to 6 days is definitely a high change in turnaround time, but I can't say it particularly surprises me, just because I think that digital transformation is really something that's starting to take a hold.
Yeah. Yeah, I put a link to Joe's article. I don't know if does your article have a link to the actual study in it, Joe? I forget whether I didn't notice if it did or not. But.
Yeah, I do. To go, yeah.
Yeah, good.
It's a link to where you go to sign up to get all that sort of thing. The drill.
Right, because it's all about those signups. That's the only reason they do these studies, is to get your email address. But yeah, no, it is interesting, and let's sort of, like Zach suggests, there are potentially so many variables that kind of go into this, but it certainly does seem that legal departments have gotten a lot savvier over the last few years in general about using tech, or just even understanding workflows and how to be more efficient around some of these workflows, and working better with the other components of the corporation that are part of this, the sales team or whatever else it is. And, I mean, until pretty recently, it's all been managed through Outlook, and Excel and things that weren't very efficient in terms of tracking the status of contracts and what was going on with them. So, but yeah, I was thinking, when I was thinking about this report, I was thinking maybe one excuse could even just be people working from home, because the 2 hour, 3 hours a day that they were spending commuting before, they're now maybe putting in a few more hours on the job and getting a little bit more done every day. I don't know, but I think I certainly do think, I like to think anyway, the technology is a good chunk of why this is getting more efficient. All right, I don't have any good transition to what Jean's other story. Jean, I know you wrote about Gavelytics, but you had another story this week?
Yeah, there was a Lexis, or it's the counsel link, released a study. This is going to be shocking. Partner rates continued to rise, and consolidation of law firms continued. The thing that, I guess I found.
Say it's not so.
Seriously.
Oh.
Again, they do want you to sign up and give them your email address to get it. I think the thing that made this one different from their 13 other ones was that it now is also looking at partner rates in selected countries. So it's not just US, there actually is some information, which often is very hard to find. But I guess the thing that shocked me was the use of AFAs is still, it's growing, but like it grows by a hair's breadth every year. And I think the statistic was that 14.8% of matters had at least a portion of billing under an alternative arrangement, but it was only 9.6% of all billings. And how long have we been talking about this?
Yeah.
Sort of amazing.
Hour is dead.
But I mean, it made me sort of curious about what we're going to see next year now that things are going to contracting. I was much more interested in seeing next year's report, because now that associates are being paid so much more, and remote work is going to continue. And I guess I wonder if this is going to end up with it, like this focuses on in-house counsel. So I guess I wonder, are in-house counsel going to start pushing back in new ways against the ever increasing rates? you know, like in terms of how do you justify those associate salaries? And do you really need all that real estate now that everybody's remote and you're going to pass those savings on to me?
Why am I feeling cynical about clients pushing back and the demise of the billable hour and all those other things?
Because we've been talking about for 20 years.
More than 20 years. I can attest to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, particularly from the in-house standpoint, like that was the argument, even with the rise of legal ops of, oh, legal departments are going to be more efficient and they have a mandate from internally to try and get those cost gains wherever they can. So it's not only going to be an internal thing for them, but an external thing. And you started to maybe see a little bit of that where they were paring down some of their panel firms, but on an individual basis of how much they're getting charged. I don't know, surveys like these keep popping up that kind of show me that not too much seems to be changing.
Yeah. Well, since we have some time, I'll bring up another story I did this week, which I thought was really interesting, which is that this new legal research service that launched called Decisis, which if you go to their website and hunt around, and you can go through and read all the different terms of service and everything else on their website, nowhere will it tell you that this company was launched by LexisNexis or its parent RELX. Do they say relax? How do they pronounce it? I don't know.
RELX.
RELX.
I think RELX.
Okay, RELX.
Yeah.
Or its parent company, which it was. Yet, if you happen to go check the corporate records, you see that Jeff Pfeiffer is the president of this company, and the general counsel of RELX is the secretary of this company. And you know, I mean, you would think if you're going to launch a legal research company in your LexisNexis, you might want to tout that connection.
I know, that's interesting.
But
so
no.
I'm a little confused at the name Decisis. Is that some like legal term? Because
it used to be. It's an outmoded.
My understanding of the last 10 days is it is not a legal term anymore.
Yeah. Starry Decisis, STARRY, I think is starry-eyed Decisis, something like that. What's interesting is they're going after the bar association business. And they've picked up a couple of bars. Was it Ohio and North Dakota? Or was it, or no, Nebraska? Ohio and Nebraska. And this comes, of course, in the year that follows Fastcase acquiring Casemaker and suddenly kind of cornering that entire market. I mean,
that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah. So for a brief time, you know, these were both the two states that this site has gotten so far were Casemaker states that went over to Fastcase because they had no choice at that point. But that they then somebody approached them, and it's funny, if you go to the Ohio state, they talk about the RELX and LexisNexis connection, even though it's nowhere on the company's website. But so it looks like LexisNexis is, you know, trying to take back the Casemaker share of this market. Although they're also targeting, they say on their website, 1 and 2 lawyer firms, but you can't find anything about pricing or anything else on their website. It's a very weird little thing. I've tried to reach Jeff Pfeiffer. I've emailed him several times, and some other people at LexisNexis as well, and nobody got back to me.
Interesting.
But I talked to the people at the Ohio bar and the Nebraska bar, and
well, you know, Lexis was born in Ohio, so maybe
it grew out of the Ohio bar.
bar.
Yeah,
That's what it was called.
Exactly. No, and they've tried to do sort of bar focused stuff in the past. This isn't the first time, but yeah, the original Lexis grew out of the Ohio State Bar Association, as we know it today. So, but again, I was more intrigued by the mystery around it all, and maybe there's some good story. I don't know, but
I mean, it does seem to me like, I mean, Fastcase being a private company and they've sort of been in their own world, and it does in some ways make sense that Lexis would try and, I mean, if I were Lexis and Westlaw, I actually would be nervous about fast case, because they are building up quietly so many different pieces of what they need to compete directly, and they are so much cheaper. I think that's interesting. I guess it almost surprises me that it took someone so long to try and compete with fast case.
Yeah, well, I think because people were kind of happy to sit back and watch Casemaker and Fastcase duel it out, for so long, and also I think they're also kind of going after case text and maybe some other products too. But if you Google case text or Fastcase, you're going to find ads for Decisis popping up. And
Bob, did you see the most recent comment? It says they make a direct comparison to fast case and case text. So is it providing a research service, or is it providing a database? I guess I wasn't clear on what they were providing.
No, it's a legal research platform. It's a little mini Lexis or something. Yeah.
Oh, I actually, when I first saw your headline, I thought they were going into the do the research for you business.
No. It's a research
Okay.
service. It's a legal research platform.
So they are trying to. So apparently they actually state on their website that they are competing with fast case and case text.
Yeah. I don't even remember if I saw that, but I must have seen that. But yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, well, they talk a lot about their citator. They say they have a best-in-class citator called Intercite, which is better than Fastcase citator. Yeah, so that will be interesting to see what happens. Anybody else? Anything else they want to talk about? Otherwise, we might have to
Run off to the
let you go
beach.
early. Run off to the beach early. We don't want to do that, do we? No beaches in Minnesota, but well, there's lakes. Right?
There's lakes. I'm actually headed to the Delaware beaches next weekend, though. It's my mom's birthday, so I'll be flying in.
Oh,
Great.
Yeah.
you might see my son down there,
Oh, nice.
as well as Gene.
Yeah, I won't be here next weekend. I'm here this weekend.
Oh, okay, all right. And Joe, we'll see you around Portland, and
Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back in New York by next week. So
yeah, good. All right. All right. Well, I think if that is it, then everybody have a great 4th, and see you back here next Friday. And hopefully I won't screw up the webinar again next week. So see you then. See y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Happy 4th.